guest speakers they bring in are fantastic. Social events would be a lot of fun, so we hope that all of you come.
So the first night, Sunday night, or Saturday evening, there'll be a meet and greet, and I'm not 100% sure. That isn't our responsibility to plan that, which is a good thing, because we have a lot on our plate right now. But so there will be a meet and greet Saturday night, and then it will start first thing Sunday morning. So if you want to find out more information, we'd love to have as many as you come, even if it's for a day, if you can come for a day. Anyway, just let us know. I'm the liaison between the national committee and the local chapter. And like I said, I introduced the rest of the committee, but just let us know if you have any questions at all.
So what are the dates?
August 27th through the 30th, which is a Wednesday.
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday to Wednesday. Okay. Glenda.
Do you mind sharing when the cutoff is for early registration discount?
April 30th. I just know I'm going anyways. I have to. Yes.
One more thing I've got to say. For anyone who signed up to volunteer, I have emailed you the forms. I need to have the volunteer commitment form by April. I'll make that commitment form as soon as you decide and are ready to do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, did everybody get that? That if you're going to volunteer, get that form to Gail so that we can, because we only have 37 slots for the discounted price. We would still love you if you want to volunteer anyway while you're there. Just let Gail know. But for those who want to get the discounted rate, you need to get that in so that she can get the true commitment and be able to give that to you so you can get your fees paid. As for the scholarship, we are asking that the scholarship information, the application, be back to us by March 31st. And we will have the winners or the people who will get it, we'll notify them by email on April 10th. And we will either send or have you pick up the check from Gail Christensen here at Canyons, so you know where you're going. Then that way you can get your registration in before the early deadline if you want to. Okay, did you have a question? Okay. Anyway, I have those here. They're right here beside me, so in the break or lunchtime. And again, we are going to be having lunch. They'll be setting up close to like between 10:30 and 11 right now. So we'll break after we hear from our speaker. And this is to celebrate you guys this month. We also have a couple other recognitions, as you can see on the agenda. We have some people that have gained their CPB. Sorry, I can't say that fast. Ms. Vicki Best Woodward from Davis School District. If you'll stand up. And Mr. John Spencer Hall from the State of Utah Division of Purchasing in Salt Lake City. I don't think he's here today, and then Alicia Roseman got hers. We did announce her, but she wasn't here. So Alicia, you'll stand up. She got hers back in the early She had left back to her desk to cover, and we had recognized her, and she's gone. So I figured we'd do it in person. All right, I'm going to turn the time over to Kurt so he can introduce our speaker. Kurt is our education chair.
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker. Yeah, put that on your resume if you'd like. So, Brandon Thomas, CPPO, is the Director of Purchasing Services at Salt Lake Community College. He received his BS, he says, but we'll say Bachelor of Science, from Utah Valley University in computer science, and an MBA from the University of Phoenix. He began his career in public procurement at Utah Valley University, where he started as a lowly purchasing specialist. Think of what we can relate. Quickly moving up the ranks to Associate Director of Purchasing Operations. Both at UVU and later at Salt Lake Community College, Brandon rewrote purchasing policies and procedures, bringing them up to date with current practice, state laws, and federal regulations. He currently resides in the beautiful town of Springville with his wife and 2 kids and enjoys the daily commute to and from Salt Lake. He will be speaking on spending federal money, and that I think was a topic that we discussed in our our monthly board meetings on a value add for our constituency. And so, without further ado, Brandon, the mic is all yours.
Let's see if this works. Is this working?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Sing.
Put it up higher. You want to hear me better? How's that? Is that better? I sound the same to me no matter where I am and when I speak and whether I have a mic or not. Always sounds exactly the same. I'm actually excited to be here and talk to you today. It's unfortunate that I got such an exciting topic. And when I was asked to speak and then I reluctantly agreed, then they said, now you have to give us a bio. So why should I have to write my own bio? But then I couldn't think of anyone else to write it for me, so I wrote one, and it took me back to when I started in purchasing, and I thought, when I was younger and I took that test, where they tell you what job you excel at, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, whatever. Mine didn't say public procurement professional. I don't even think it's on the list, which is unfortunate, right? Like, how many of you, when you were young, you went, I'm going to be a public procurement professional when I grow up? That is so disappointing. Yeah. I don't even think anybody knew what was, right? You just kind of fall into this kind of a job. But it's a fun job, and we have a lot of cool things that we get to do. We experience a lot of different emotions as we go through our lives, and you get to learn how to buy a bunch of interesting things. At least I do. So I've spent my whole public purchasing career at an institution of higher education, where we all believe we are different. And that's true, just not quite the way I think everyone thinks. But we get to buy a lot of interesting things. And it reminded me of a poem that I read 1,000,000 years ago, which is a long time ago, for those of you who don't know. And I thought I'd share it with you because it's have fun before we talk about federal regulations. School requisitions are amazing indeed. They show the diversity of each school's need. Consider the following, if you will, typical requests for us to fulfill. Tootsie Rolls and vaulting poles, pinking shears and tractor gears, artist palettes and rubber melons, clarinet reeds, watermelon seeds. Tootsie Rolls and vaulting poles, pinking shears and tractor and globulin gamma, cows, hooves, trimmers, magazines for swimmers, track shoes petite for Tongan feet, tire patches, suitcase catches, butcher cleavers and pain relievers, soup, turkey noodle, and trumpets to tootle, handbooks for elders and goggles for welders, children's little rubber dolls, bass, soft, and ping pong balls, films on udders and how they function, ordered without the slightest compunction, strawberries and earthworms preserved of course, pink eye spray to treat a horse, March Militaire for a sax quartet, helmet liners with bands for sweat. Yes, school requisitions have many surprises. If they only reveal what color, how many, how soon, and what sizes. A buyer from BYU wrote that.
Can we all get a copy of that?
Absolutely not. It's copyrighted. But I'll get permission to give it to you. Be back. We'll share with everybody. It's been published, so it's okay. Is that all right? Okay. But I'll get fun is over with. Be back. We'll share with everybody. It's been published, so it's okay. Which is one of my favorite things. I love it. Okay, but I'll get fun is over with. Be back. We'll share with everybody. It's been published, so it's okay. Which is one of my favorite things. I love it. Okay, but I'll get fun is over with. Be back. We'll share with everybody. It's been published, so it's okay. Which is one of my favorite things. I love it. Okay, but I'll get fun is over with. Be back. We'll share with everybody. It's been published, so it's okay. Which is one of my favorite things. I love it. Okay, but I'll get fun is deal with A, B, C, most of D, almost all of E and F, and the 12 appendices. Who writes this stuff? So we're just going to talk about the parts in D and E, and then one of the appendices today, because they're the ones that deal directly with the purchasing. We're going to say that grant office, whoever they are, they get to read the rest. Lucky. So let's jump into the purchasing stuff. So all of this should not be new, because unless you've just started today, and then it's will lucky. But otherwise, it will not new. So let's start. There are some purchasing methods we'll go over, but before we can do that, we got to talk about their thresholds. They have what is called a micro purchase threshold. Now we might call that different. Some people call this a small dollar threshold. Some people just call it the P-card threshold. I don't know. People call them different things. This is set by FAR. It does say 3,000 in uniform guidance, but it's a lie, because it says 3,000 or whatever FAR says it is, and FAR says it's 3,500. So they just shouldn't have said anything at all. So it's $3,500, $2,000 for construction, and recently there's a new threshold of $10,000 for higher education research institutions that has been released that is questioned. They're talking about it right now. They've heard. Glendon, have you heard?
It's not
Any
public.
move? It's just still just kind of sitting there
It's a concept.
as maybe this will happen.
It's been deferred till next year.
Maybe.
Maybe.
The other threshold they have is what's called the simplified acquisition threshold, or what I like to call SAT. And it's set at $150,000. Think of this as your advertised bid limit. All right, so let's wake up just a little bit and let's talk about what your thresholds are. So are your thresholds similar to this? Or are they significantly lower? Are they significantly higher? Lower? Is anybody higher than any of these? No, there's some institutions that have like $5,000 limit that you micro purchase. What is the general simplified acquisition advertised threshold? 50? Is that about where everybody sits and everybody jumps on the 50 or somewhere? All right. Well, now you get to make a decision. You could decide that if it's federal money, you're going to jump it up to 150, or you can continue operating, leave everything the same. Say if it's over the 50, I'm going to advertise it. Do the same thing with federal money that I do with everything else, because this is just the minimum threshold. You can't go beyond that. So there are some things, luckily, you won't have to do. Even if you're doing an advertised bid between 50 and 150, you'll be able to skip some things that are required by uniform guidance, because it specifically says that it has to be over the simplified acquisition threshold, which is nice, because some of those are nice. All right, on to the procurement flaw. This is the way that OMB describes the procurement method. So I thought I would steal it because might as well. It's so cute.
You just wanted to put a claw on your.
Maybe I did. You have no proof of that. Let's talk about the pad of first, the general standards. So rule number 1 is you have to have documented policies. That shouldn't be a problem for anybody. I hope you all have documented policies. And we'll talk about some of the requirements in those in just a second. Every purchase on a federal grant must be necessary, and necessary means it's allowable under the grant. So I was going to just say allowable, but it needs to be necessary. Everybody always thinks every purchase they make is necessary. So you're not the best person to make that decision. So we'll leave that to somebody else. Then we have to have everything that's supposed to be full and open competition unless you don't have to. I love that. But everything must be unless it doesn't require it. That's very descriptive. Thank you. You can have no conflict of interest, which is typical. But there are some caveats with that. And then documentation. There must be documentation for every part of it. The documentation needs to include how you picked the vendor and any cost and price analysis that you were required to do. that you simply did because you like to. In your written policies and standards that you are required to have, you must outline how you're going to manage each of the 5 procurement methods, what your thresholds will be, and then you also have to outline a management plan for how you deal with conflicts of interest, which most people, I think, already have such things. So you shouldn't have to do anything. That's nice. So one of the big things that they suggest is that you centralize your purchasing processes, especially when it comes to federal grants. Now, all of us are fairly centralized, but we decentralize a little bit. We hand out purchasing cards to our users and let them go out and spend money on their own. Some people do these SPO, small dollar purchase orders, or department purchase orders, allowing other people to just issue their own purchase orders up to a certain threshold without purchasing getting their nose into it, or other things that you might have. Those are great, but note, you are still responsible for making sure that everything follows uniform guidance when it's a federal grant. So that becomes more difficult when you decentralize things. My strong suggestion is just make sure anything you decentralize is below that micro purchase threshold. Then you have to deal with it. If you have people out there with purchasing cards that can spend up to $5,000, $6,000, you might not want to issue those to people on a grant, something like that. Okay? All right, now let's get into the 5. This is how they define the 5. So the first one is micro purchase, which means anything below $3,500, which nicely says go do whatever you want. But then they say, give equitable distribution. How do we give equitable distribution? Just don't spend all of your money in one place, right? It's if you need to buy a bunch of stuff and you're going to go buy office supplies over and over and over again, and you don't have a contract for them, then spread the love. Buy some here and buy some there. Give equitable treatment to everybody. All right. Next group we have small purchases. This ranges from $3,500 all the way to $150,000. That's kind of cool. No one ever gets to do that. So always gets $50,000. Here you have to get rate quotes. You don't have to do any price analysis or cost analysis or anything like that. And a price quote is defined as anything, any place where you've got a price. So phone call, the internet, whatever, wherever you can get pricing, those all count. The next group, 3 and 4 together, sealed bids, competitive proposals, we know what those are. We know they work. Everything over 150 or over that simplified acquisition threshold must go through one of those sealed bids and competitive proposals and use those processes. The last one is sole source. They give 4 options for sole source. This isn't new. It's the same thing as anything else. We've got it's either unique or it's compatibility thing, maybe it's an emergency. Then they have one cool one, which is it's authorized by the agency, meaning it's written in the grant. And this is where it can get a little tricky. Is some people, when they apply for the grant, they write in, I want this really cool widget that will cost a lot of money, and I want to buy it from these people, and it will be awesome. And then they get awarded the grant, and they go, it says in my grant I can buy that one item from that company. No, it does not. It says in your grant, in your application that you wanted to buy it, and in your award, it says you were given money to buy an item that can accomplish that, whatever it was. And so very rarely is there actually a grant that comes out and says you can just not worry about purchasing rules and just buy this particular item. But it does happen. And if it does, whether it's written in the grant or later authorized, then you can sole source it. No questions asked. If it says you can, you can. There is also part of the pass-through entity, which institutions of higher education get to do that kind of a lot, or some of them get to do it more often than others. If you are a pass-through entity to another one, then you are giving permission to others to buy a specific item. Or the other way around, if you're being given. Okay, that was all the easy stuff. Now there's all the extra stuff. They pile on top of what we already know and say, you also have to do this when dealing with federal money. And I find that to be incredibly annoying. I don't know about you, but it's just like, leave me alone and just let me buy things and stop adding these extra rules on top of it. Does that annoy anybody else? Does it annoy you? What other things annoy you? You get annoyed? Me too. You know, one of the things that really annoys, I'll give you three. Here you go. These are three of the things that annoy me. Orders that linger. How many of you have had that one order where they call you up and they're like, I need to get this and I need it yesterday, and you bend over backwards to get the bid done, you get it awarded, it comes in, and one piece is broken. And 6 months later, you're still working with that company to try and fix this. It's like an order that will not go away. You didn't even want to do it in the first place. That's annoying. Embarrassing specifications drive me insane. It's like, does anybody know what it's like to call an animal shelter and say, hi, do you have any rabbits? And they go, yes. Do you have any that are sick or dying? No one wants to do that. That's kind of odd. But they need a sick or dying rabbit. What a bizarre thing to need. They don't have to do it. And you know they're laughing. There's also those unwanted commodities, you know, like porta potties. Like someone goes, I need porta potties, and you're just sitting there going, and they go, well, you're not doing anything. You go buy some porta potties, and from then on, you're the porta potty buyer. It's like all you ever do. See, these are the things that annoy us. Well, the other things that annoy us are when they add extra regulations onto things that we already know how to do. And they're kind of condescending, like, well, duh, do that anyway. But they make it sound like no one ever does this. So here's a few. First one, small minority women in labor surplus. It does not say preference. I want to make that very clear. It does not say preference. I argued with someone about this just the other day. It does not say preference. We don't give preference. But they do say, give them the opportunity to participate. Here's some ideas that you may incorporate to give them this opportunity. Put them on the bid list in the first place. Well, that's a great way to allow them to join in. Let's put them on a bid list. The second one scares a lot of people. Divide the project into smaller pieces. This is not saying to divide the procurement into small pieces to avoid a limit. It's not saying that, just to make it clear. It's simply saying take the big project that maybe a large corporation, a large company could handle. If you can, break it into smaller pieces and manage them and award them in pieces to different individuals. So you could do one procurement and award it to multiple people, if it's possible. It's always, because everyone goes, well, I don't want to do that. That would be terrible. I don't think I can handle it. Doesn't say you have to, it just says can. All right, establishing delivery schedules that make it possible, utilizing the SBA, attending the Governor's Symposium for small businesses that they do once a year. It's a great way of helping people figure out how to do business with a government entity. And it helps in this particular, so when you're audited and they say, what do you do here? I attend once a year symposium from the governor, and it counts as trying because you're introducing yourself and you're making it up. And then, of course, requiring a prime contractor to do that with their subs when they're awarded. Geographical preference. I don't even know why they mention this. It's, you can't do it. Can't give geographical preference. Is that a problem in Utah? Do we give geographical preference? Does anybody give geographical preference?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
I would say Salt Lake County does.
Do they?
Actually, it's for the county. You have to have a local business license in the county.
Mm-hmm. And you certainly, I mean, any agency is certainly welcome to do any type of geographical preference, but not with federal money. They don't do that. Now, this is different than having a requirement they reside in a certain area in order to provide service, or whatever those requirements are. That is different than giving geographical preference. But if it is your general practice to do it, you can't with federal money.
State auditors have issues with that too, for those who are state funded.
Yeah. I've never given geographical preference. We do have a reciprocal preference law here, which let's just not do it. But for the most part, just don't do it. Recovered materials is the other one that's kind of fun. This only applies to procurements over 10 grand. And basically, it's that when awarding the bid, you need to make sure that it complies with section 6002. Oh, goody.
Solid waste disposal act.
Awesome, right? Now, basically, it just says that it needs to contain the highest percentage of recovered materials possible. Now, most of you, if you look at various items, like plastic items and stuff, like monitors, and you look in the back, and you've got the EPA thing and stuff. Those kind of things are what they're talking about. Basically, throw that in as part of your bids provisions and be done. You know, the items that you bid need to comply with this section of code. Most companies who are manufacturing in America are already doing so. Now here's where it gets fun. Things that are over the SAT, that simplified acquisition threshold, which was $150,000. So this is not anything that you did an advertised bid for. It has to be over the $150,000. You have to negotiate the profit with the awarded vendor. And that also applies to any sole source that you do, regardless of amount. You need to sit down and negotiate that profit. How many of you do that? Here's some things to consider when you're negotiating profit. One is the complexity of the work to be performed, the risk borne by the contractor's investment, the amount of subcontracting, one more, and the quality of its record of past performance. Oh, no, one more. And the industry profit rates in the surrounding geographical area. So this is something where you're going to try and negotiate that profit to the benefit of both entities. It's kind of a different thing, something you're not used to. This is something you do with the awarded vendor, not during the bid process, just to be clear. But it's something that's really important. It's something that I like to try and emphasize with anybody who's doing a sole source. If you award a sole source and you've never had a conversation with that vendor regarding the cost of the item, you're probably not getting the best price. They know they've got a sole source. They know you're just taking whatever price they gave you. Maybe you should have that conversation with them about their costs and see is there any cost savings available if we were to discuss it. And with federal money, you get to do that. And you should do it all the time. This is actually two. I titled the slide independent cost estimate and then put two things on this slide to have me. These are two separate things. One is you do have to do an independent cost estimate. This is for stuff, again, over $150,000, where you need to get an estimate of how much it's going to cost prior to doing the bid. Now, all of you actually probably do this already, and just didn't ever think about it. Now, in construction, this is like way easy. The architect helps you, provides you all this cool information. He says, and this project's going to cost you $48 million, and you go, great. And now you have your independent cost estimate. Perfectly simple. But it's not always that easy. Some projects are harder than others. Getting an independent cost estimate is not calling the company and saying, will you give me a quote? And then using that as your independent cost estimate. Do you see the problem? Yeah. Independent means not the vendor's amount. Okay. You could be the one that is making that, or somebody at your organization may be the one that's coming up with that independent cost estimate based on their knowledge of the market. So they might say this kind of stuff it typically costs $58,000, or this might cost $380,000. That's typically how much they run. Great. It does not say that you have to go out and hire somebody to do it. It just says it has to be independent. You need to make an estimate. Now this helps when you're trying to negotiate profit later, because you're going to be doing that with these same things. Because then at least you have a benchmark of where you thought it was going to hit. And if it's hitting above that, then you can have that conversation of why is it hitting above that. Okay. The other thing you have to do is do a cost or price analysis on all the purchases over the simplified threshold. Now that's something, cost-benefit analysis. You guys are used to it. It's amazing. Anybody who went to that, what was that, EdCap, you already know how to do those. You're really good at them. So you do need to do something And all of this is all over that $150,000. Typically, most federal awards, when you're dealing with them that are not construction, they're not usually buying a single item over this threshold. That's nice. Okay. Meet Sam. Has anybody dealt with Sam before? Wonderful. Who is Sam? Who remembers who Sam was before he was Sam? When he was the excluded list? The debarment man. Let's just take a look at Sam for those who've never been there. And I bet that when I put this link, it will say, this is kind of a cool feature of Sam. It hates Firefox. But if you just try it, doesn't make any sense. Okay. So this is SAM. SAM is where you would go to find whether or not a vendor has been debarred or you are forbidden to utilize federal money to pay for goods or services from that vendor. Let's pick somebody cool like Target. Because Target is cool. Now you don't have to register for a username, password, or anything. You can just search the records. It's free. All right, so I'm just going to come here, and we're going to look for Target so that we can see what this looks like. And when I search for Target, I get every entity that has Target in the name or in the description. That's fantastic. I just want to see those that are on the exclusions list. So I'm going to just put this exclusion over here to filter this so that it just gets me the exclusion list. And it's going to tell me you might get people back, and they may or may not be forbidden in your area, and blah, blah, blah. And you could read that if you really wanted to, but I don't read. So just click OK, and you wonder what it says later. All right, so here we have Target Corporation, which is where everybody loves to shop. Oh my gosh, they're on the exclusions list. How many of you have used federal money to buy things at Target? Now think of all of the P card holders that go to Target. Okay. Now, just because they're on the list does not mean you cannot use them. We must read the details. There might be something interesting in there. It will tell us who can, whatever. It will give us a little bit more information. Now, if I scroll down, right here, we have some additional comments. And look what it says. It says, convicted of Clean Water Act violations, ineligible for awards to be performed at this facility only, and then gives this cool Target department store in Pensacola, Florida. We are not surprised. But unless they're spending money in Pensacola, Florida at that Target, you're going to be okay. Okay, does that make sense? The point of this is that just because they came up when you search doesn't mean you can't use them. Sometimes they're very specific. Some of them can even say, this agency can't buy them from them because they do this, or you can't buy this type of stuff from them because of this problem. So you want to read what it actually is, what they're excluded from doing. Now, this is very important that you do this with every purchase made on federal grant. Because if you ever do spend federal money, sure, okay. If you ever do spend federal money, then and they catch you on it with a debarred vendor, then they can take away all the federal money and they can debar you. They don't call it that, but you could be in. There are lots of things they could do. You don't want to put anything in jeopardy, so we'll just make sure we check SAM. So if you are going to decentralize purchasing for these federal monies, then someone has to be telling them, make sure you check SAM. I have never actually had one come back, a vendor come back saying, oh, this has been debarred. Because we're really good here. We're not like Pensacola. Okay.
Hey, Brandon,
Yes, sir.
what dollar level are you checking at on SAM?
Everything. That's what. Yeah. It doesn't give a dollar threshold. And so we just check everything, and we do allow people to do P cards and some other things, and they are instructed to check it. Not by our office, but by the grants office. So
There may be a threshold, like I could say,
I think there used to be a threshold, because I remember a threshold, but when I was reading it, I could not find the threshold attached to this. It might be something we might want to check.
Brandon, I know when I've asked Deborah a couple times, she said anything under $2,000 you can.
Under the micro purchase threshold, probably, it wouldn't be penalized for. That's probably true. I should check the latest frequently asked questions and see what it says. Like I said, it changes all the time. At one point, I was told that it was only for RFPs. And then it kind of morphed from there, but it's gone through a lot over the last 5 years. All right. This is Peter Tolo's favorite thing, is record keeping. Peter loves paper. No, I'm going to put a plug out there. There is a lot of stuff you need to keep here. It does not say anywhere that you have to be able to provide paper copies to anybody, so you don't need to have this big file or these paper copies, and so that when auditors come in, they can do it. They can do this electronically, which is actually kind of nice, because then if they want something, you just email it to them, or give them access to the repository. It's a lot easier. But in your records, you do need to maintain basically the life cycle of a procurement. Why you picked the type of procurement method you did, why you picked the vendor you did, all of that kind of stuff all needs to go into the record. These records have to be kept for a minimum of 3 years, which is actually significantly less than most people keep records, because I think here we keep them 7 years, which is so awesome. Imagine the paper. So electronic. You can keep these electronically and not have the paper. If you're buying equipment or real property, it's for the life of, for the ownership of that plus 3 years after you dispose of. All right. We all love that. Whoops. This thing is so sensitive. If I touch it, it just wants to go too. Okay. We've made it through all the additional requirements, we think. And now let's talk about CCC, or contracts, control, and cost principles. The first one is fairly important to deal with those, and the other two get less important as time goes on. So let's see what they are. In Appendix 2, there's a list of all these cool things that you need to include in your contracts. Now, here are the best parts. They are fairly specific with certain things, and a lot of them deal with only certain types of purchases or certain dollar thresholds. So the first three, just include them in your general terms and conditions, and you kind of get those taken care of. Equal opportunity employment, a debarment clause, if they are debarred during the course, then you can cancel terminate the contract. And then, of course, if you're having them invent something, they don't get to own it. You get to own it. The federal government actually gets to own it in this case. That kind of stuff. Construction, I know, I think this is funny. How many people do construction projects under $2,000 on a regular basis? Well, if you do, you don't need to say anything about Davis Bacon. Otherwise, you get to mention it. And then we have over $10,000 we're going to terminate for cause and convenience. Have clauses about that. And then, of course, the Recovered Materials and Solid Waste Disposal Act, which we all love. And then when it gets over $100,000, you get to include things like the Deferred Anti-Lobbying Act. That's important. And if it's mechanics and laborers that are hiring, then you get to mention the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act. All of this is just you mention them in your contract. That's all. That's the requirement. And then the last one, if it's over 150,000, then of course the Clean Air Act and Federal Water Pollution Act. So you don't end up on the debarred list like that for Target and Principal. Okay. Just make all of those just standard provisions in all of your contracts and see how many people have those people calling and say, why do we have to comply with it? All right, the second C is control. This is all about internal controls. Now, typically, when you're a procurement officer, you don't get to come up with internal controls. You get to comply with internal controls. Somebody else tells you what they're supposed to be. But with federal money, there does have to be a certain level of internal controls. And typically, there is like an office of grants management, or at least an individual who's been deemed with the power to deal with grants, and they will deal with the internal controls and stuff like that. But it's something to think about. Just think of what the control structure is at your organization. Who are the people that come up with internal controls? Who are the people that come and audit to make sure that you're dealing with those internal controls? And what type of internal controls are you aware of that you should be implementing or have already implemented? It's just something to keep in your mind. There is a fascinating section on this that I'm not going to get into. Because typically it is outside of the procurement office. But it's something you need to be aware of, because sometimes they may come to you and say, you need to be doing X, Y, Z when you do this, because that's our control. Okay. All right. This is the most exciting part. I know you've been waiting for it. Cost principles. What the heck is a cost principle? In uniform guidance, they have 55 cost principles. Sounds intriguing. Let's go find out what these are. So here we go. If we go here, and you scroll to the list of 55, here they are. Now these are simply special instructions for buying certain types of commodities, or they could be special instructions for dealing with certain situations. Like they're just basically, this is where we put everything we didn't know where else to put it. So we put it here. So let's just take a look and see. We're not going to read any of them. We'll just kind of click on it. Like conferences. If you look at it, there's this big long explanation about conferences and whether or not they can or can't go. Cool. Okay? Now there's 55 of these. Here's the way I deal with cost principles. I see, oh look, they want to buy this widget. I'm going to see if it's on the list. If it's on the list, you read it. And you go, oh, I have to do it that way. If it's not on the list, I read nothing. It's a good way to do it. Some of them are long. Look at contingency provisions. That's terrible. Now some of them deal with situations, and so if you're dealing with a weird situation, like exchange rates, you're going to buy something overseas. There's one actually for exchange rates and how you're supposed to deal with that. So when you have something, a weird situation or any commodity, you just check the list to see if there's something there. Being that there are 55, it's difficult to take all of those and compile them. But here's one that's really interesting. For those of you who have dealt with buying stuff, computers. Computers used to be considered equipment when you purchased them with federal money. Didn't matter the cost, they were called equipment. Now computers are cheap nowadays. They are cheap. Doesn't make sense to call them equipment or trackable. Equipment in the federal world is trackable items. That doesn't make sense to track these tablets and stuff like that at a federal level. And so they finally said, oh, well, we're not going to consider them, we're going to consider them supplies. So they can be purchased as a supply, which doesn't need to be tracked. So that kind of information is here in the cost principles. All right? Fascinating, wonderful stuff. There's some good stuff about severance pay. That's a good one. We should read that. Now note that federal money can be used to pay salaries of individuals and stuff like that, so all that kind of information is there, what is allowable stuff. Now, in addition to these 55 cost principles that are part of uniform guidance, every grant comes with its own. Well, of course. Why wouldn't it? And it usually lists things that are allowable and not allowable under that particular grant. Now, typically, purchasing doesn't have to deal with that. But every once in a while, when it starts to smell a little weird, or you start to feel a little uncomfortable with what they're buying, it's like, why are you buying lingerie from France? That doesn't seem right. There's not a cost principle on lingerie from France. can I see your grant award document to see what you were given money for? So whenever it feels just a little weird, it's been asked for it, see what their grant was for, and then you can act accordingly. Just a good way of being part of the internal control. There usually is somebody else supposed to be doing that, but typically they find out after you've already bought that lingerie from France. Again, embarrassing specs, right? Strange. All right. I'm gonna end with this thing, and it's catalogs. And I got one today. I love this. How many of you get catalogs like in the mail? Physical catalog? Why? Do you ever wonder that? Do you like, why are you giving me? Do you ever get them and go, who are these people? Or I haven't done business with them since 1982, or something like that. Like it's weird, right? Okay. Johnny Carson once said that for 3 days after death, hair and fingernails continue to grow, but phone calls taper off. Now, I think we could take this and morph it just a little bit to say this. For years after you retire, your 401k will continue to vanish, but the company to whom you placed your very first order will send you catalogs for it. That's very true. Trying to be crazy annoyances, right? And I like to tell them, don't ever send me your catalog again, or I will not buy from you. All right. I've thrown into this PowerPoint some resources of places that you can go for additional information and some helps and some guides and stuff like that. There's, of course, the ECFR, which is the code itself, but then COFR and TOGR and DOE all have great information about uniform guidance and how to deal with it. Both from a purchasing standpoint, they actually have websites dedicated to the purchasing side. There's a lot more difficult for those non-government entities to which that get this kind of funding. They also have help for other people who need to deal with the rest of the grant process. So with that, any questions or comments or jeers? Any?
Just in experience here, how much government purchasing is being done, or how much do we not know about?
That is a good question. Now, see, those of us who are at colleges and universities, we get a lot of federal grant money, some more than others, but there's quite a bit going on there now. It's probably in the counties, cities, school districts, probably less so, but still. There's funding available, so if you're not getting it, it's only because people aren't applying for it. In fact, I know that Pleasant Grove got a federal grant to buy a fire truck years ago, and called me in a panic because I got federal money, but now what do I do? Because their city rules, surprisingly, not incredibly clear on how to purchase things. Their idea of purchasing code is, well, just get me the receipt when you're done. $1.5 million fire truck, get me the receipt when you're done. Made him feel uncomfortable, so he called me and we walked through the process because it's a little more complicated. But it was something he'd never done. So it does happen, and it only happened because that chief decided to apply for the federal money. So if the word gets out, we'll have a lot. There's $600 billion to be spent. You want to send them. Only 50 now. Yes.
Child nutrition is a lot of federal money, so most of the school districts have to have those federal regulations in there for all their food for kids.
Especially those who have the after-school feed programs.
Yes, ma'am.
What do the dead people spend money on? That's what I want to know. The French one.
Probably, wouldn't you? I don't know. That's it, like, where did it go?
Yeah.
That's the real question is, who got it? Thompson didn't tell me. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of it obviously fraudulent, they have it sent there and then he runs it himself. Try to hide it. Probably not. It's probably very embarrassing.
Probably, since there's more money, federal money, higher ed level, how frequently do you see audits, not just specific to the grant, but specific to your purchasing functions? You have people come and audit that specifically in federal level.
I'm trying to think of when the last time we had a federal audit of our purchasing. Yeah, the University of Utah, though, they get, research institutions get a lot more because they are under microscope. That's fun. Thank you. I don't think I ever have. They come all every year. They audit every grant every year and deal with that. But I haven't had them come into our office. I mean, other than they do, if the records aren't there, they do come to purchasing records and something. But they haven't really gone through it to audit the process, but they threaten it all the time. And so we've been told, I know at Salt Lake Community College for the past 2 years, I think, they've been telling us they're going to come and audit our process. And it makes the grants office really nervous, and I tell them, don't worry about it, we're taking care of it.
They've been in with.
That makes them even more nervous, because I don't tell them the details. But, yeah.
They have been in with the State Office of Education auditing all of the school nutrition. A lot of the E-care districts have been getting audited.
And they go in rotation, so whenever they get to us, it's not if, it's when, all the time. So. And if you get any federal money, if you've ever gotten any federal money ever, they will come to visit the All right. Well, thank you. So, if you ever have questions about it, feel free to call me or email me.
Thank you very much for the preparation and going through this and really spelling it out for people that are a little bit ignorant like myself. So as a token of our appreciation, a certificate of appreciation awarded to you. Yes, go over that and I appreciate that. And will the PowerPoint presentation be available? Okay, for use. Great. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Kurt. Again, we thank Brandon for taking his time with us. I want to give you guys a break. We're still waiting for the luncheon to come, and then when we come back, we have a few items that we need to present and go through, and then we want to have a question and answer session. Anything that you're dealing with and going through right now that we might be able to share, help, and maybe throw out to the group that we can brainstorm with all of the experience in the room to help. But right now, we'll give you a 15-minute break or 10-minute break to go. Bathrooms are to the left outside.